And then I'll just like I'll welcome everyone, Hannah.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Sharon. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. It looks like people are connecting their audio, their video. We're letting people in through the wait room. And so we'll give it another minute or so as folks join. So sit tight and we'll start in about a minute or two. Hi, Marilyn, Gracie, all these friends. Good to see everyone. Hi, Trisha.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, perfect. Good to see you, Trisha.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Hi, Jesse. Looking around my screen. Again, a lot of familiar faces. So good to see everyone. Like I said, if you're just joining, we're waiting another minute or two. More folks are joining, coming in through the waiting room, and then we will get started. Thanks again, Paige, for your help on the back end, admitting folks and everything tech. Really appreciate it. Okay, I think we'll get started again. We have, I'm assuming more people will be joining, but I'll get started right now. If we have not met before, my name is Mitch Price and I work for the LeashTag Foundation. The LeashTag Foundation, if you're not familiar, is located in Encinitas, California. And one of our top priorities is helping build nonprofit capacity in communities throughout San Diego and Jerusalem, Israel. Our program this morning fits within this strategy and comes out of the Hive, which is our Center for Professional Development, Networking, and Social Engagement. If this is your first time you are with us and you would like to learn more, if you want to like reconnect, we're happy to share out more information and add you to our mailing list. My wonderful colleague on the call, Paige Milgram Hills, we'll also probably drop in this information in the chat as well, but I can do it, and we'll send it also in the outgoing email as a follow-up. I do want to highlight that the Hive has 2 upcoming workshops in November and December. Coming up on November 30th, we will host a Zoom and in person, so you have the option to attend online or come and hang out in person. The workshop's called When the Spark Fades, How to Keep Volunteers Engaged, and we'll explore volunteer engagement, ways to strengthen their commitment, and brainstorm ways to acknowledge their contributions to your organization. Then on December 13th, we will host an in-person, this one's actually in person only, we won't have a Zoom option for this, LGBTQ competency training, and that's led by the terrific Max Disposti. Max is the executive director of the North County LGBTQ Resource Center. And if you haven't had the pleasure to meet him, just like I said, a wonderful, wonderful person. And that session should really be provide a lot of information in creating an inclusive workplace. I also want to plug our free weekly Fundraising Fridays meeting, which meets over Zoom at 9 a.m. every Friday. We usually have about 40 to 50 different folks join each week where we discuss funding opportunities, like brainstorm donor strategies, discuss events and more. And these gatherings are very informal. Come as you are. You can come once a week, every month, every other month, whatever it works out for your schedule. And really new topics are explored every single week. In fact, most of our workshop ideas like this one come out of these meetings. So we'd love for you to join us. I'll start with a few housekeeping, not rules, it sounds like very rigid, but rules for lack of a better term, and then turn over to my wonderful friend and colleague, Hannah Berger, who many of you know. First, we will be sending out the PowerPoint that's used during this presentation shortly after today's workshop. So you don't need to like worry about writing every piece of information down on the slides. Again, we'll send it out. And second, at the end of our time together, we will drop a very short survey into the chat, and we greatly appreciate you taking this right away. Your feedback helps us plan out future workshops. Today's workshop will be about an hour, followed by a time of Q&A. There'll be plenty of time to ask questions, brainstorm a bit, And I'll be monitoring the chat as questions come up. Hannah will likely stop every so often to ask questions, but you're welcome just to drop it into the chat if they're pressing, and we can see if they should be addressed, right away or held off until the end. And I had the pleasure of meeting Hannah when she led a cause selling accelerate cohort I participated in through the Fundraising Academy. I can't recommend that program enough. The Accelerate is like perfect for anyone newer in fundraising, in the fundraising field, and provides a really great overview of donor stewardship and different social styles and how to perfect a solicitation and really all things fundraising. We'll also include information about that in the outgoing email, the follow-up email, in case you want to join or pass along to a colleague. Let's see, now a little bit about Hannah. She has supported dozens of nonprofit organizations in raising more than $100 million, specializing in major expansion campaigns, board recruitment and development, and the creation of strategic development plans. She is an expert at revitalizing fundraising programs to realize exponential growth, is skilled at building authentic relationships with clients, donor media and community members alike, and thoroughly enjoys coaching other mission-driven professionals to do the same. I can say that I'm a better fundraising professional because I know Hannah, and I look forward to our time together this morning. So Hannah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mitch. That made my day. I really appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I'm so thrilled that you're here. I want to start things off by thanking Mitch, the team at the Hive, the folks at the Leech Tag Foundation. I'm always thrilled when I get to do workshops with this group because it feels like coming home. So know that this is a low pressure, high support environment today, hoping to make it as interactive as possible. So let's get the chat warmed up. I know a few of you went ahead and introduced yourself, which is great. Please continue to do that. This is a session all about networking. So if we don't leave here today with a new connection, we've done something wrong. So let's make sure we introduce ourselves. I'm gonna, let's make this a little bit fun to make sure everybody's paying attention. So I know that it's the holiday season. I, for one, have food on my mind. Drop in the chat something that you are looking forward to enjoying and sharing. What holiday food is really exciting for you? What's coming up? I know for me, I happen to make probably the second best latkes I've ever had. So that's something I look forward to making every Hanukkah. I'm not much of a cook, but I do those really, really well. So let's warm up the chat. Sweet potatoes and marshmallows and brown sugar. Yes. Thank you, Mitch. Tamales. Made by anyone but me. Okay, Carlos. I'm glad you're here, Carlos. It's good to see you. Paula Dean's corn casserole. Okay, we might have to drop some links to recipes. This is great. Okay, lovely. So we got some foodies in the house. I'm so thrilled to see that. Keep them coming. I'm gonna start sharing my screen so we can get into this presentation. Okay, and I will mention this. I know Mitch already said it, but in terms of housekeeping, I've asked Mitch to keep an eye on the chat and go ahead and completely interrupt me when juicy things pop up. If there are things that come up in questions, you can feel free to raise your hand, preferably the Zoom emoji as opposed to your actual hand so that Mitch can help keep track of that as well. And if any questions come up that don't totally apply to what we're talking about in the moment, he's going to help us reserve those for later on during the actual Q&A piece of the session. So today we're all about networking, right? We're going to perfect our personal pitch and talk about ways that we can make networking work for our busy lives. So this session was actually selected by the Hive, and it's something that I've been doing with clients, specifically teams that have a lot of diversity in terms of their experience level. So I know some of us here today are seasoned pros. We've been doing this for decades, and we can really work a room. But I would imagine that some of us, right, folks earlier in their career, or maybe some of us that just feel out of practice, having lived through a pandemic where we were separated for years, we're feeling like it's a little challenging to get into things. I'm hearing a lot from my clients that do have team members that are more junior, that are earlier in their career, that it doesn't feel totally comfortable, second nature. And there's really 4 key things that I'm hearing a lot of that we're going to cover today in the terms of challenges that people are experiencing. So we're going to dig into those details. But before I do that, just a little bit more about the services that I provide to our community. So my name is Hannah, rhymes with Donna, not banana, unless you're British, and then got to throw that out, come up with something cuter. But I am a fundraising and nonprofit management consultant. I'm also an empowerment coach, which means that I work with professionals in our social sector, particularly those that do fundraising. So development officers, CEOs, executive directors, board members, to help them get more comfortable around talking about resource development and recruiting for their community of support. I've been doing this work for more than 20 years now. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but here we are. And 10 of those years I spent as a nonprofit executive. So why do I share all this? Because I want you to feel comfortable that I've got a lot of lived experience that will support the things that I'm sharing today. I'm a storyteller at heart, right? So a lot of what I'll do is kind of share some anecdotes that come from my actual lived experience as a professional fundraiser, as a champion of the social sector. I particularly like to share those things that are perhaps a little bit uncomfortable or embarrassing at the time, so that folks can kind of learn from my mistakes, maybe avoid some of them. And hopefully you'll find that really, really valuable. So in the chat, when you think about networking, I want you to share the first word that comes to mind. Sigh. Community. I love that. Trisha said schmoozing. Okay. Is that a positive or a negative, Trisha? Exhausting, says Desiree. Okay. Sharon says people, relationships, oy vey. We got an oy vey. Okay. Squishy. I like that word. Positive. Okay. Awesome, Trisha. Thank you. And Mike says possibility. Great. Some diversity of emotions there, right? I'm hopeful that our time today will shift those feelings mostly to positive, right? So our objectives, we're gonna reframe networking. I want to talk a little bit about what is it really? Like, what's the point of it all? Why do we spend our time doing it? And how can it help excel our careers? Okay, and then we're gonna address some common challenges. These are the 4 things that I address most with my clients: social anxiety, awkward conversations and how to navigate them, time constraints, right? That is the number 1 sort of complaint challenge that we deal with, right? There's just not enough hours in the day. And then lack of follow-up, AKA for all the fundraisers in the Zoom room, stewardship, okay? We're going to talk about leaning into active listening, understanding how to make the most of our networking interactions, and then talk a little bit about tools for better preparation and less stress around networking. In particular, we're going to do a breakout that I hope everybody will be on camera for, but we definitely need you to have audio because you're going to work in pairs. So I'm going to walk everybody through an exercise that I do with my coaching clients in real time, and then we'll break up into pairs and do a peer sharing. Okay, so let's respond to this poll. Paige will pop it up on the screen. There we go. What type of networking do you currently engage in? Okay. Oh, it looks like, let's say that you get engaged in most. It looks like from my end that you can only select one option here. Diana says many types: mentoring, young professionals, alumni networking, donor networking events. Okay, very good. Okay, so we've got some diversity, but I'm seeing a lot of in-person events, and then a fair amount of folks responded, I don't engage in networking much, but I want to. Great. So I hope that today you walk away with a personal action plan, which, spoiler alert, if you got the attachment from Paige this morning, The worksheet that we're going to walk through together has a personal action plan and sort of the second half of it. Okay, so good information. Thank you everyone for responding. So let's define networking. This is a simple definition that comes from dictionary.com. And quite frankly, when I read through this, it kind of sounds a little nightmarish, right? Just interacting with others to exchange information and develop contacts. Snooze fest. Okay, so what is it really? When I think about what is networking and what was my sort of introduction to it, I think of when I was 22 years old, living in Washington, D.C., fresh out of college, you know, armed with a fistful of business cards and probably an ill-fitting Navy suit. And I went to a Chamber of Commerce event, right? I was working for the American Association of University Women in a program development position. And I was, you know, just the most junior person on the staff. So I remember walking to this event, registering, and this man walked up to me and basically shoved a business card in my face and said, "Where's your card?" And I handed him one. And then before we could have any kind of real engagement, like we may have exchanged names, the organization we worked for, his eyes were darting around the room looking for other people to connect with, and then he was off. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, is this what grown-ups do? This is awful. And I want to make sure that this early experience is not the kind of thing that we are putting out in the world, and it's certainly not what we're taking in, right? So what is networking really? Personally, my definition is it's connection. Okay, it's an opportunity to figure out how we align around values, around our vision for our community. It's identifying how we might be able to support one another, right? It's an opportunity to create relationships with our peers in the sector, with potential donors if we are fundraisers, with folks who might need the services our organizations provide. It's a space to share interesting ideas. So let's say you've got a vision for something great you want to do, a program you want to enact, a organization you want to start, a business that you want to find investors in. These are all spaces that we can sort of share these ideas, find people who align with them, and create real meaningful connection. It's a tool for recruiting folks to our organizations, to our communities, right? So let's talk a little bit about the 4 key challenges that I'm seeing when it comes to networking these days. First and foremost, I want to talk about social anxiety. Now, this is not social anxiety disorder. That is a mental health diagnosis. That is, I am not talking about that. What I'm talking about is sort of this generalized anxiousness that people are experiencing around getting out there, right? So this is a quote from one of my clients. "I'm nervous about being in a room with dozens of people I don't know." So first and foremost, you know, safety, dignity, respect, always. I want to just put that on the table. That's how we operate. I wanted to talk about this in particular because the way I'm seeing it come up for folks is a lot of the professionals in the sector who are more seasoned can get really frustrated with their team members who are younger, in particular, those that haven't had a lot of career development prior to the last few years. Now, imagine coming out of college, you're in your first professional role, you're living in a pandemic. You haven't had the opportunity to have that awkward experience I just described when I was a 22-year-old in Washington, D.C., right? You haven't gotten that muscle memory around engaging with people in person. And quite frankly, you could be really terrified of COVID or catching something else these days. So my point in saying all of this is we want to make sure, especially if we're in a management or a mentorship position, that we're identifying the source of the anxiety so that we can help our team members overcome it or come up with solutions, right? So if it's a health-related concern, obviously we want to identify ways that we can engage with folks, but maintain our healthy boundaries. That might mean suggesting that folks do continue to wear masks if they're going to indoor events. It could mean encouraging them to come up with the way that they're comfortable greeting people. I was at an event last week in downtown San Diego, seeing friends that I hadn't seen in a while, and it was hugs all around, but somebody that I know pretty well stopped me and gave me a fist bump because that's how they're engaging these days. And that's okay, right? We're in a different era now, and we have to be really accepting of the physical boundaries that people need to maintain for their own health and wellness. Okay. For folks who might be out of practice or new to networking, giving exercises, things they can engage in to sort of prepare themselves is a great way to alleviate anxiety. And the exercise we're going to do today is something that I encourage you, if you have a team, that you repurpose it, use it with your team, help them get prepared for interacting with folks in real time. Okay, for those who are new to their role, might have anxiety representing the agency. That's all about preparation as well. Coming up with speaking points before you head into an event so that you are armed with enough knowledge to make those initial connections and get folks interested in the work that you do. So once you've identified the source of the anxiety, the challenge here that I offer to you is to identify 2 to 3 ways to address that concern. So if you've got anxiety personally about getting out there, ask yourself, what really is going on for me here? What are my main concerns? And then what are 2 to 3 ways that I can offer solutions for myself, to my supervisor, whomever I kind of need to work with to manage expectations about how I'm getting out there and socializing and networking, right? So the second challenge that I work with my clients a lot on is navigating awkward conversations. So we've all been there, right? Occasionally we can be at events, we can be in a Zoom meeting, and a conversation can feel like pulling teeth, or the person that we're speaking with is just going on and on and on about a topic that we know very little about. We can't kind of interject to share our perspective or add to the conversation. Or worse, we're in a group conversation and someone cracks an inappropriate joke that we find offensive, right? So there's lots of different ways that conversations can get awkward while networking. And here are a few tips to kind of get out of the awkwardness relatively unscathed. So keeping your conversations flowing with open-ended questions. I'm sure most of you are pros at this, but what are some open-ended questions that you use regularly when meeting new people or networking? Drop them into the chat for me. A few examples are here. Tell me about a win you had this week. Something really simple, like what brings you to this event? Carlos offered, what is something new you've learned recently? Love that. Love that. Anything else? What excites you most about your organization? Fantastic. Great. So open-ended questions it's any question where the person has to give us more than a one-word answer, right? You want to present it in a way that they've got to, they can't say yes, they can't say no. It hopefully isn't like a maybe, right? You're asking them to give you some actual runway of information, right? So we're going to go through the process of brainstorming a few open-ended questions that we can kind of have in our toolkit at all times. To make sure that when we're having these interactions, we feel we're well prepared to kind of be the bolster for that conversation if we need to. Susan said, what makes you successful in your job? Great question. And Lila offered, how do you get into the work that you do? I love a good origin story. Okay, the second thing I want to offer is to always practice active listening, especially when we're in like a crowded in-person event. It can be really tough to make sure that we are staying completely engaged and focused on the person that we're talking to, right? In order to keep a conversation flowing, we want to make sure that we're really listening, paying attention, staying focused, asking thoughtful follow-up questions, sharing generously of our own thoughts and experiences on the topic at hand, right? And then saying their name. That's one of the key ways. That's one of my key tricks that I use when I'm meeting someone new. When I'm trying to keep someone focused on the conversation that I'm having with them, when I'm trying to teach myself a new person's name, right? I will add their name to the beginning or the end of a sentence. Hopefully, if we're in a networking environment, there are name tags involved because that can get really tricky as well. But, you know, I don't know if it's true anymore, but I once heard that you have to say something, hear something 7 times. 7 is like the magic number of repetition before it's locked into your mind. And I kind of play a game with myself when I'm in these, especially in-person events, where I'll try to get a person's name 7 times during a conversation to really lock it in. So that's my hot tip there. Personal information is not off the table when you're networking. Caveat to that, only share what you are absolutely comfortable sharing about yourself, right? So if you're in a professional environment, and people are asking you questions about what you do, who you are, what excites you, your family makeup, right? We're walking into the holidays. People are thinking about family a lot, even more so than normal, perhaps, right? So feel free to share of yourself, talk about the kids, talk about your furry kids, right? Share your holiday traditions. Keeping things light around hobbies, music, food, movies. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We are all very complex creatures with a lot of varied interests. And even though we're in a professional development environment, bringing in some of your unique personality is absolutely 100% not only acceptable, but really positive and enriching. And if all else fails and you're in a terribly awkward conversation, there is nothing wrong with politely excusing yourself, right? Be polite yet direct. You can say something to the tune of, "It's been great speaking with you. If you'll excuse me," and walk away, right? It can be that simple. You don't have to stay and suffer. Drawing the conversation to a clear close and excusing yourself to move on to something else is totally fine. So I want to make sure you feel the permission in that. Okay, number 3, time constraint is, as I said, we all wish there were more hours in the day, right? But here's the thing about time. What we focus on and dedicate time for is what's going to improve and grow in our life. So if we're looking to make our next career move, if we desire to grow our circle of friends or donors for our organization, we need to recruit new board members, perhaps. We absolutely have to make time for networking. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So how do we make sure that we're using our time wisely is the question. Much like we would qualify potential donors to our organizations by looking at their affinity for our cause and their capacity to give, we can qualify networking opportunities to determine what's the highest and best use of our time. So here are a few helpful prompts to consider when you're qualifying the opportunities that are presented to you. Ask yourself, how much time will I really need to commit to this gathering? Is there preparation involved? Perhaps you need to go home from the office and change in order to attend. Perhaps it's a costume party, then you have to shop for a costume. Maybe, I haven't seen this a lot recently, but maybe you have to take a COVID test before you go. Anything that has to happen before you can be fully present, you're going to want to take that to consideration. Your commute, how much time before and after do you need to get from point A to point B, right? There's an incredible opportunity across town, but you know it's going to take you as long to get there and get back as you would have time invested into meeting people. You're going to want to ask yourself if it's actually worth it. Okay. The second really important thing is, are there individuals or groups in attendance that you need and want to connect with? So you're always going to want to find out if you can connect with the host or the planners of the event to get a guest list in advance. I am not above using my network to do that sort of thing. In fact, even for a situation like this, I always want to look at who's signed up to attend, right? So Mitch sent me a list yesterday. I got to see what organizations were going to be present, the people, their titles, right? Which roles, because I want to know who I'm speaking to today. Obviously, I was going to be here no matter what. This isn't necessarily a networking opportunity for me, but if any of you were attending a workshop, a conference, you know, a gala event for another nonprofit organization, asking to see the attendee list in advance is not an outrageous request. Also, leveraging technology. A lot of conferences are using apps like Whova now. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, but WHOVA. And these apps show you all of the attendees that are present. Some of them even have their contact information. Some of them, you can use a chat function to DM folks to make connections. So being mindful of what is available to you, walking into these great networking opportunities, and how you can kind of jump the line to make connections, right? Maybe you can text someone who's present who's planning to be present at an event through an app and say, I'd love to meet you between sessions to grab a coffee and talk, right? Just kind of getting ahead of the mix by using the technology at hand. And then ask yourself, especially if you're in a management position, can this opportunity be delegated to someone on my team? One, that helps with your time constraints. Two, it's experiential professional development, right? If there's an event where you want somebody from your organization present, but you've already been to 4 events this week, maybe it's time to delegate to someone on your team. That could be a staff member, that could be a board member, right? That could be somebody who's on a volunteer committee. Okay. And I would be remiss if we didn't talk about social media. So social media activity is networking, right? We're not just on there for fun and to share like cute animal videos. Social media, in particular LinkedIn, is a fantastic way to build your professional community and connect with potential supporters, potential board members, all the folks that you might want to be a part of your organization's story. So ways that we want to show up on platforms like LinkedIn, information sharing. You don't necessarily have to be the author of the blogs and articles, but sharing things that resonate with you or that represent your mission well can be just as powerful. Commenting on other thought leaders' posts, so people that you want to network with, people you want to meet, getting into their comment section can be a really good way to get their attention, right? Sharing great information in the media about your organization and tagging other contacts that you want to see and share it can also be a fast track to networking to certain people. Okay. Using social media to find your tribe. So LinkedIn, Facebook, both of those platforms offer groups, private groups that you can become a part of. I know that on LinkedIn, I'm really active in the CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive group, right? I'll repost everything that I would post on my general account there because I'm getting a particular group of folks who are fundraising executives, potential clients for me, potential peer support. So always look at what sort of groups are out there that you might want to be a part of to really engage in further. You're going to want to post there, start conversations, engage in conversations that other people have started, respond to requests for support. There's a great Facebook group that I'm not going to remember the exact name of now, but it's essentially like nonprofit founders and development professionals. And people are in there asking questions all day long. It is a nonprofit consultant's dream, first of all, because you can just pop in there and start giving people the gift of your knowledge and resources and hopefully getting some leads in return, right? But it's also a great space to find your tribe, to find those people who might be in similar roles as you, represent similar organizations, are in similar geographic regions, right? That you can connect with and then become co-conspirators. And then don't be shy about messaging people directly. If you're looking to meet them in real life, ask them for coffee via social media. Now, I wouldn't necessarily advise that you find your, next major donor's private Facebook or Instagram account and slide into those DMs, but going to the professional LinkedIn and sending an invitation for a meeting is definitely not out of the question. Okay. Anything in the chat we need to address, Mitch? I'm gonna pause for a sec.
Yeah, again, you're welcome to do so along the way.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Diana, I see your DM. Way to follow the instructions on the screen.
Actually, one question came in.
We'll address that.
Hannah, one question that came in from Terry was, what was the name of that group that you mentioned on LinkedIn? I think it was like the CRFE group.
Yes, CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive. CFRE is a international. Yeah, thanks, Mitch. So if you Google that, you'll get the actual CFRE organization, and there's a group on LinkedIn for folks that are CFREs. So that's a designation that you test for and earn. And then folks who are planning to become. Okay, so last challenge before we jump into our exercise. Okay, so how many of us have been guilty by show of hands? You've gone to a major event, you've been around dozens, if not hundreds of people. You've shaken so many hands that you can't recall. You come home with a big stack of business cards and you forget who some of those people are. Okay, we've all been there, right? My first professional mentor used to say to me, the contact is only as good as the follow-up. If you don't remember who you spoke to, if you can't recall the conversation you had, and you're unable to send them a meaningful email or phone call or text message, however you're communicating, it's like you never met them at all, right? So let's talk for just a minute about making sure we've got great follow-up. So this is not unlike, for those of us that are fundraisers, this is not unlike building a donor relationship, right? The stewardship or the care and feeding of those individuals, our newfound friends and colleagues. That's the secret to building long-lasting relationships and our networks, right? So what does this mean? It means that we need to make sure that our follow-up follows the 4 Ps. Now, these are the 4 Ps that we teach at Fundraising Academy. And they are the 4 Ps that I subscribe to and pretty much everything I do when it comes to stewardship. So after an initial meeting with someone, your correspondence should be prompt. Okay, you want to quickly follow up within a couple of days. I always say personalized, right? I would cringe if I got an email from somebody I met at a networking event that felt like a form letter that they sent to dozens of people, right? Passionate, so putting something in there that makes them feel your personality, emotion, commitment to your cause, the thing that you were talking about. You know, if you had a conversation about your dogs and you were going to send them your referral code for the adorable puppy sweater that you recently bought, right? Whatever you're passionate about, you want to make sure it's coming through in the follow-up. And positive. You know, the positivity piece always speaks to what kind of energy do we want people to feel? What do we want to bring into the room? How do we want to be remembered? So whenever I'm connecting with folks in person at an event, through a Zoom room meeting, I always follow up by email first, right? With a follow-up to whatever the conversation was that we had. So I'm old school in that I still do paper and pen. I still use paper business cards. I do have a business card app that I'll use at conferences sometimes when I'm meeting like a high volume of people. But when I go to events, I'm usually armed with business cards, and I will shamelessly take a break at a networking event and jot down notes on the back of people's cards. So I remember exactly who they are, what we talked about, and anything that's come up for me about what I want to follow up with them about, any commitments I've made to them about where our conversation is going to go next. Okay. So those are the 4 challenges. Those are my hot tips. What I'd like to do now is get into an exercise around perfecting our personal pitch. So if anxiety is one of the things you need to overcome, or one of the things your teammates need to overcome, preparation may be a key to overcoming that emotion, right? So this exercise can be really helpful. You can repurpose it with your team. Please, please, please feel free to steal this, okay? So you were given a worksheet. Paige, if you could drop the attachment into the chat as well. If you don't have the worksheet, if you don't want to open this, if you're a paper and pen person, feel free to just use what's in front of you. I'm going to offer you a few prompts, provide a sample response, and then be quiet for approximately 1 minute while you jot down your response to the prompt, okay? And then when we get to the end of the prompts, we're going to break into pairs, and in your group, you're going to do a peer sharing with each other, right? So again, low pressure, high support. This should feel kind of fun, okay? Okay, so our first prompt, your name. This one should be easy. And any notes on pronunciation or your title. If you are a person who, God bless you, went through all of the school and you are a doctor, whether it's an MD, a PhD, or anything else, a JD, an EDD, and you want that on your name, make sure that's in your introduction, right? So I always say, hi, I'm Hannah Berger. Hannah rhymes with Donna, not banana, because I want people to remember that. When I was coming up, there were not a lot of Hannahs, there were not a lot of Hannahs. But now I meet a 20-something-year-old Hannah probably every other week. So I like to give that pronunciation note. Okay, so jot that down. What are the specifics around you, how you want to be called? Okay. The next prompt is probably going to take a little bit longer to respond to. What do you do and why? So this goes beyond your job title and organization, most likely. My sample offering for this is I work in philanthropy as a consultant and empowerment coach. I help social sector organizations improve their daily management and exponentially increase their revenue so they can positively impact more lives. And when you're done jotting that down, you can just look back at your cameras. Good. Okay. Great. The third prompt. Who do you want to connect with? So let's pretend for a moment we're at a conference. Maybe it's the next event you have on your calendar. Who do you want to connect with? So an example for this might be, I'm excited to meet nonprofit leaders, executive staff members, board members. My firm, the Philanthropy Coach, is growing, and we are always looking for new clients to support. Okay, feeling pretty good on that one. Couple more seconds. Okay. And this last prompt, I want you to consider, how can you be of service? What do you want to offer while networking? So my example for this is connecting people for mutual benefit is my absolute favorite thing to do. I blame my Jewish heritage for being a natural matchmaker. It's just my thing, right? So I would say, who might I be able to connect you with today? Is there anyone here that you're excited to meet? Maybe I can help with that. Okay, when you're done with those prompts, if you could give me a thumbs up, either the emoji or your hand. Okay. Sarah, I saw that face. Everything okay? All right, looks like we are good to go to our breakout groups. So, let's see, where are we on time? We're actually going to do 10 minutes since we're going to do this in pairs. And what I will ask is that those of you who are more extroverted or feeling really brave, offer to go first. What you're going to do is put it all together. So you just responded to those 4 prompts. I want you to, in pairs, we can call it role play. We can just call it having a conversation, but go into there, to your breakout and pretend like you're meeting at a networking event. Okay, so start by introducing yourself. I'm asking you to kind of role play through the prompts together so you can take turns to kind of get it all out and let the other person respond with any kind of questions that come up for them. They might, what we're trying to do here is get you to what feels like a concise introduction that you can practice and build muscle memory around so that when you go into your upcoming events, when you go into your next workshop where you've got time to meet people, you've got some language that you can repurpose, okay? So a few more prompts to consider, and we're gonna come back and do a little share out afterwards, but you know, what grabbed your attention about what they said? What was most memorable in their introduction? Was there information that you wanted to know that was missing? Ask those questions, offer that feedback. Okay. Any questions before we go into our breakouts? Just look at the group. Okay. And for those of you who are currently off camera, if you're able and willing, would love for you to put your cameras on when you go into your breakout, just so folks can see your expressions. Have fun.
And then Rob, did you get a request to join breakout room? Oh, yep, I guess so.
It looks, oh, good. Oops. Okay. Hi, folks, welcome back. Just accidentally closed out my presentation, so I'm opening it back up. Okay. Do I have any, do we have everybody back? Looks like a couple folks are still chatting, which is great. Give them 8 more seconds. So if anyone is, was particularly moved by their experience in their peer share, I'd love to have a volunteer share out about what they heard, an aha moment that they experienced. Anyone have anything they'd like to share with the group? Diana?
I'll share. I had Rob Canton in my group and really enjoyed getting to meet him. He's relatively new working in North County and relatively new with his organization. So we talked a little bit about how to, you know, kind of immerse yourself in your organization to gather that knowledge quickly. But he did a great job going through, you know, in the networking and talking about how I could be helpful or whoever he was running into. And it was just a pleasure connecting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diana. Anyone else? Did anyone struggle coming up with their introduction? Yeah, I saw a couple of nods. Terry, were you able to kind of break through? Oh,
I think so. I think that I don't do a whole lot of networking, and I think that's partly to blame for but I keep on struggling about, because I'm multifaceted and I try to really be specific on what I'm going to offer, and I just still kind of struggle with that a little bit.
did your partner help you kind of narrow things down or come up with?
He did. One of my things is that I'm a storyteller as well as an event planner, and I don't really know how to, and would prefer to be more involved in the storytelling element, but kind of want to show that I am a certified event planner so that I can kind of be more the marketing element as a storyteller and not so much the opposite. So that's where I'm kind of a little bit not sure how that would kind of work into that.
Gotcha. So, what resonates for me there, so before I went full-time into consulting, I was doing it on the side, but I knew that it's something I wanted to transition to, right? So I was in a full-time head of fundraising role with a nonprofit organization that I needed to represent, right? That was paying the bills. And it was also, I mean, obviously I was there because I was passionate about the organization's mission. But I had to do good by them and try to identify new relationships for my blossoming consulting practice. So I was having the same kind of internal dialogue or battle with myself about like, what do I want to share in this situation? And what I decided was, depending on the event, I would highlight which role do I highlight first, knowing that if the conversation veers in that direction, I can absolutely share this passion project I'm working on, this new offering that might be really beneficial to that person, right? So I would encourage you to maybe think about that, like going into the event, asking yourself, who's going to be here that I might want to meet? What do I want to highlight first? So it's kind of, instead of thinking about like eliminating a piece of your awesomeness, just thinking about and prioritizing what you talk about first.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Terry. It's great. Okay. So I'd love for us to take a look at our personal action plans. I can get back to my slideshow. Okay. So the second part of that document that you were working from, where the prompts were located, is a personal action plan. When I conduct trainings, I usually try to end with these because it's always good to walk away knowing, okay, what did I just take from that? What do I want to put into practice? I use the word action very intentionally because the idea here is that we want something to come of this. We want there to be activity on the back end of this learning, okay, that enriches our lives. So the first prompt that you should see on that page is networking is. I want you to plug in what you're thinking and feeling about networking now. Has it shifted from this morning when we started? Did the oy vey change? If it doesn't feel like it's changed yet, maybe plug in there what you want it to become. Networking is an opportunity to build community. Right? I intentionally use the word affirm because I'm a big believer in the use of affirmations. If you say it enough to yourself, you will believe it. Okay. The next prompt is one step I will take to overcome anxiety. And if you're one of the lucky people who doesn't have anxiety around networking, maybe it's one step I will take to help my team, my volunteers, overcome anxiety around networking. Okay. One step. Okay, the next prompt is to navigate awkward conversations. I will use open-ended questions like. So I just encourage you to drop down a couple of open-ended questions that you can have in your toolbox to use all the time. Okay, this one is about the time constraints piece. So we talked about a lot of different ways that we can qualify networking opportunities to identify what's the best use of our time. So what are things that you are now going to consider when you're prioritizing these opportunities? We talked about preparation, we talked about commute, we talked about the guest list. Right? What are the things you need to consider before committing to a networking engagement? Okay. And I want to challenge you to come up with at least one tactic we talked about during the presentation, or maybe you discussed in your breakout, but one tactic that you're excited to try. So maybe that's going to an in-person event before the end of the year. Maybe it is updating your LinkedIn profile and sending out some DMs to people you want to meet to ask them for coffee. Okay. And I would challenge you to put a time limit on that, or a goal this month, the end of the year, by Q1 maybe, right? Measurable. Okay. And after your next event, you will follow up with the good folks you met by doing what? What are the steps that you are committing to taking in the way of follow-up? Okay. Alrighty, so hopefully you now have a personal action plan that you can work with. I hope that you will use it, right, as you go back out into the world, as you prepare for all the holiday events that are coming at you. And just as a reminder, what we talked about today, networking is community building, right? And we work in the social sector. Community building is what we do. In our hearts, I know that we're all mission-driven folks, right? We're activists in our hearts, whether our role is program development, whether it's fundraising, whether it is finance and administration, we're building community, right? So networking is important to that. We're going to overcome anxiety about networking through reflection, identifying the source of the anxiety, stating our intentions, preparing better. So we've got some tools in our toolkit that we can use. Sorry, my dog is suddenly very interested in what's going on screen. We're going to navigate awkward conversations with active listening, open-ended questions, and when all else fails, by being very direct and kind and leaving the situation. We're going to qualify our networking opportunities so we're not spreading ourselves too thin. And we will leverage social media to make the most of our very valuable time. And then, of course, we're going to practice the 4 Ps in our follow-up: prompt, personalized, passionate, and positive communication. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pause for any questions that folks might have. We've got a few minutes left.
You're welcome to raise your hand or drop your questions in the chat. I had a person send me a private message with a question, so I can kick us off. But again, drop your questions into the chat. So Hannah, what information should be on a business card? They said besides like email and phone, should you put like organization website or mission, LinkedIn profile, should have a photo, double-sided? Should there be like a QR code? What information would you recommend putting on a business card?
Oh, such a good question. And I almost want to open up the floor to this because I feel like it's really subjective. I would just encourage you to keep it concise and easy to read. And what I mean by that is not all of us have perfect eyesight, and some folks that we meet may also be more seasoned, which means that they need bigger type font. So I would say basic minimums: email, phone, website URL, or a QR code that takes you to the website. Title, name. Those are the basics. I don't think it needs to be overly designed. I appreciate folks that hand me a business card that's an interesting shape. But then sometimes it doesn't fit in my wallet or my business card holder. Mitch,
We
what do you
got-
think? Any thoughts?
I was just going to say, we actually have some great ideas coming into the chat, and that Sarah said she's been using a business or a digital business card. Sarah, would you expand on that a little bit, or would you be willing to expand on that in the group, just to explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, I use the OVU card. It's kind of pricey at the beginning, but there's no subscription. But it's really great. I actually just show my phone and it gives a QR code. It has my picture on it, my title, it gives the website, but they also are allowed to basically just download my contact information directly into their phone contacts with my email, my social media, links, my LinkedIn and all of that kind of stuff. So it's been a really easy way for me to connect with people. I can then see who has then like downloaded my information. So it gives me kind of a list that then I can follow up with. So it's been super, super helpful. The people are like, oh, this is great. I don't have to take a business card. I now already have it. So it's been really nice.
Sarah, what was the name of that app?
It's the OVU. I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. It's a great resource. And I like the note that Karen shared, not glossy, because then you can't write on the back of it. That's important.
Yeah, and similarly, Diana was saying, made the mistake of having a colored back to the business card, which makes it also hard to jot notes. I love that idea, or that tip that you were talking about, Hannah, not even at networking events, you'll go, for the last 5 minutes or sit to the side or something like that to write those personal notes to remember folks. And then Sarah, thanks again for dropping in that resource. Any other questions? I have actually a couple that came in through direct message to me, but want to make sure, does anyone else have? Jesse, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a question?
I do. I went to a networking event a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciate your really practical advice of like, is this the right event to attend? But when I got there, I just realized like it was somebody who had given us grant funding, so it was like relevant for us to be there. But like, I think I felt a little bit peripheral. It was a lot of like health professionals at this event. And so I'm curious if you have any advice of like, when you find yourself in a situation where maybe like, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or just maybe not the best fit, do you have any advice for like how to show up in a situation like that?
That's a great question. I mean, I would always just think, how can I make the best of this situation? So if you're in a room where you think we don't have anything to align on professionally, well, first I would say, are you a fundraiser? Okay. So in my mind, if you're in a room full of health professionals, especially if some of them are MDs, those are folks that may have capacity and in theory affinity for your cause, right? So I would probably take the opportunity to start introducing myself as a grantee of the organization that we're all there to be in community around, and find ways to get people to ask me questions about my organization so I can share more.
I like it.
And I was just going to add in, like, even if it is simply a personal connection, you never know down the road, if you were to friend one of those people on LinkedIn, what connection they would have to an individual that you're trying to like get to. So even just having talking about family or interests or those kind of things can still spur connections later on that you might be surprised about.
Yeah, well said. Great, thank you, Jesse.
I had another question, like I said, come in. Does your, or you mentioned posting or reposting articles on LinkedIn. Is there any other ways that you use that platform, and what information should be on your like personal profile?
Sorry, can you read that one more time? I saw something come through in the chat at the same time.
Yeah, no worries. So you mentioned posting or reposting articles and tagging folks, like when in regards to like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Is there any other ways that you use that platform, and what information should be included on your profile? So like I'm assuming just your individual LinkedIn page.
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, absolutely positively include a photo. it always kind of boggles my mind when I see people who I know have massive networks and they don't even have a photo. The idea there is that you want to make sure, one, the people know how to find you in a crowd in real life if they've connected with you on LinkedIn, but also some of us don't have extremely unique names, and you want to make sure you're connecting with the right person, right? So you've got to have a face. Two, make sure that your name on LinkedIn aligns with your name on your business card, right? If you've gotten married, if you've gotten divorced, if you've changed your name for any reason, you want to make sure that your personal brand is consistent, right? LinkedIn can also be like a resume, right? You can, all of the organizations you've worked for previously, your positions, your titles, your wins. You don't have to go crazy and put every job you've ever had, but I would encourage, especially those of us that may be looking for your next big move, to use that wisely. Shameless self-promotion is really kind of what LinkedIn is all about, beyond also connecting with people. Put your volunteer service in there. You know, think about it as my personal LinkedIn is the way to connect with others. And so the more connection points I can put on my profile, the more people will see it, right? So for me, that means organizations I've worked with as staff. It means organizations I've been a volunteer leader with. It means clients. It's also a really cool place to do storytelling, photos, videos, sharing blogs and articles that you write personally or somebody else writes that resonate for you. I'm going to call out somebody who's in the Zoom room. Mike Gelman did a really great post that I actually commented on earlier this week. It may have been yesterday, about these great net walks that he's doing in North County. So if you don't know Mike, find Mike on LinkedIn, connect with him. You can use him as a model. I hope that's helpful. Mitch, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think that's super helpful. I will just say anecdotally, if anyone has like studied abroad, like I have like the time that I studied abroad, and I can't tell you how many times that has come up randomly, and just that is an easy entryway of like, oh, you studied in Germany and Berlin, like blah 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 blah, blah. And it just adds that kind of like personal connection that you know wouldn't have otherwise naturally probably come up, because that was 12, 13 years ago that happened.
Yeah, universities, fraternities, sororities, service clubs, Rotary, Kiwanis, things like that. All that's good information on LinkedIn to find other connections.
I love this. Just again, I'm monitoring time too, and I see a couple of actually really great questions coming into the chat. Gracie, I loved your question. She asked, what is the best way to practice active listening? I feel like it is so hard in a networking events with so many conversations happening, such going around you.
Yeah, great question. I'm not going to say it's easy, but okay, so to your point about so many conversations happening around you, I think that there's a couple of ways to handle that. If you're somebody who's sensitive to a lot of stimulation, sensory stimulation, and you're having a conversation with somebody that you know you need to make a connection with, you might want to say, do you mind if we step aside here or find a quiet corner? I'm having a hard time hearing you, right? The active part of the listening is really that it's focusing more attention on that person that you're having the conversation with, right? It's not just sort of passively listening and letting things kind of float into your brain and not really do anything with it. So it's really about engagement. You know, gently interrupting somebody to move to a quieter space, or I'm trying to think what I did at the last event I was at. Oh, you know, I was chatting with two people and I said, do you mind if we take a seat? So even just changing the level from standing to sitting can be really beneficial when you need to focus in more, you're having trouble, you know, just keeping track with all the auditory stuff. Any other hot tips, Mitch? Anybody else have anything you want to share?
Terry?
I have another suggestion. I had the same issues, and I am taking a nonviolent communication class. Nonviolent is really not the correct word. It's more compassionate communication. And it's an 8-week and you can find it on Meetup. So that's been very helpful for me as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Terry. Compassionate communication. Great. I see Trisha had a question. Is it ever okay to share personal information on LinkedIn? I think it depends on how comfortable you are.
Well, I haven't done this, but I've seen other people do this. And I really relegate LinkedIn to business conversations.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, does this bother anybody else when we get personal information about someone? If it's personal that relates to their job, it might be one thing, but I don't know. How do you relate LinkedIn in your mind? I relate it as business conversations, and
Yeah.
Facebook or Instagram as personal conversations. Like, I'm not on Facebook with anyone I work with. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I take a similar approach to you, Trisha. I would say if you wouldn't send it in an email to your clients or people you work with, your team, then don't put it on LinkedIn. Right. So I've seen people share, they got married, they had, a big life event, a child was born, things like that. And I think you can do that in a way that still comes across really professional. But I've also like cringed sometimes when I see people post things that, like vacation photos when they're in a bikini, like, and maybe I'm old school because I feel that way, but I think start with what feels appropriate to you first and foremost. And my rule of thumb is if you wouldn't put it in a staff email, let's say an all staff email, then don't put it on LinkedIn.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Going back to the different networking events that happen, someone asked, is there a location that is helpful in knowing what kind of networking events are in this area? And Mike, I was wondering, could you drop into the chat information about those net walks? I think this is probably the third or fourth time that he's hosted these, and really just an awesome gathering of nonprofit professionals. So that's one area. As I was mentioning, the Hive at Leishstead Commons, our professional development kind of like wing, we host a lot of kind of meet the funder events, which then just turn in naturally to networking events, probably like 2 or 3 times per year. So our calendar is updated very regularly, and we'll have 3 to 4 different type of professional development events kind of per month or every other month. North County Philanthropy Council, and I'll drop all these into the chat, is another great membership organization, as well as AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals, and any other organizations or ways that people find networking events that you want to share?
Service clubs are always great for networking for all kinds of reasons. So if you are a Rotary, Kiwanis, Seroptimist, I apologize, I'm not going to remember all of them, but if you've been a member of those organizations, you might want to consider looking up your local chapter and going to a meeting. Especially, social sector folks, those are people who are already service minded. Any other sources people want to share? I will say this, if you're tight on time or high in anxiety around networking, I would positively avoid events like networking after work. Or there are similar sort of networking event groups that exist that do this very large event gatherings, hundreds of people, all different sectors. So really, back to what I presented on, kind of take the time to think through what are my priorities, and then do a little Google search. I want to meet social sector folks that specialize in data management in San Diego County. Plug those words into Google and see what comes up. You might be surprised. There's something that specific. And yes, AFP is amazing. I think we have a couple of board members in the Zoom room today, AFP San Diego. I'm a member of the AFP board, Association of Fundraising Professionals in Los Angeles. Great groups. Okay, I think we've got 5 minutes left. Mitch, do you want to kind of close us out? And I know there's a survey to respond to. I will just once again sorry, Mitch, before I pass the mic, thank you so much to all of you. I hope you walk away today with something that feels valuable and actionable. I appreciate you showing up and enthusiastically participating. Please know that I am an eager resource for you. Let me put my contact information up on the screen before we jump. There we go. And I look forward to seeing you all at future events and networking with you in real life. And thank you so much, Mitch, to you, to the team at the Hive, to Leech Tag Foundation for involving me in this week's professional development workshops. Super grateful. Always a pleasure to be a part of these.
We're just equally thankful for your partnership and, like I said, friendship, and just thank you for facilitating such a great session today. I've definitely learned a lot and jotted down personal notes. We'll send out the recording, like I said, at the beginning of this session. So in case you want to like rewatch, we'll include the PowerPoint presentation, as well as a short survey, which will definitely help inform future sessions at the Hive. And just want to wish everyone, I was going to say a great weekend, but it's only Wednesday. So wishing you all a great rest of your week. And my colleague Paige dropped into the chat that survey. Again, 1 or 2 minutes of your time, we would greatly appreciate it, even if you just open it right now in these last 3 minutes of our time together. So again, we'll see you at a future session, whether that's Fundraising Fridays, some of our upcoming workshops, and look for the follow-up email maybe later today, if not first thing tomorrow morning. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great day.